Hello and welcome back to Invincible Asia. I'm George Clark and today I get to check out the wonderful Game of Death released in 4K by Arrow Video. Don't forget folks, before we go any further, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel, ring the bell, like the video and all that jibber jabber, and thank you very much for supporting Invincible Asia. So of course, leading on from my unboxing of Arrow Video's Bruce Lee at Golden Harvest box set, it was just phenomenal. Please go back and check that video out. It's been a long week of Bruce Lee, and I mean that in the most wonderful way, of course, but the biggest one for me has to be this video, because not only with this one Game of Death movie, you get one disc, you don't get two, you get three, and this has taken a lot of my time to get through all of these. I mean, literally as much as I possibly could get through before I needed to just collapse and go to sleep. I am pretty exhausted, I'm not going to lie to you. So yes, three different versions released here of Game of Death. I'm going to start, of course, with the original release. We have Game of Death, alternate versions, and the final Game of Death. So this is going to be a bit more of a longer video than the other releases, simply because I wanted to put them all together and talk to you about those differences in there. So let's begin with Game of Death. This bizarre cut and paste unfinished piece that has, I don't know, it's an odd one. I mean, I really like Game of Death. I just find that the cut scenes with Bruce throughout, for obviously he doesn't really appear until about 80 minutes in there, if you're watching this international cut. But yeah, I find it, those little snippets, they just kind of, they really do take away. And when you're kind of a die-hard fan, you just know where they're from. So it's hard to take it seriously that it's him. Now maybe as a kid I fell for it. In fact, probably did as a kid. But of course now, and especially in 4K, it just breaks everything down so much more and makes everything so much clearer that you just know for a fact that that's not Bruce. Most of the time it's Yuen, which is just wonderful. He does most of the kicks and stunt doubling for the Bruce Lee lookalike. I can't remember his name right now, sorry. But yes, so of course we have this massive involvement from Golden Harvest, Sammo Hung and Yuen, and quite a few other members of the Bruce Lee Sammo Hung team that are in there. Anyway, more stunning artwork from Tom Ralston, and I have to say the 4K restoration of this international cut looks absolutely fantastic for the most part. I did watch it with the audio commentary from Mike Leader and Brandon Bentley, which was really great to hear. I have to say, lots of informative pieces there. I have heard audio commentaries before on the Criterion version, on the Kong Legends DVDs, but this was pretty exciting. I think these two definitely worked well in bouncing off each other with what they had to say. The international cut ran for about 101 minutes, but again, looked fantastic, and it was just great to be able to see this as clear as I have ever seen it. The Criterion was stunning, don't get me wrong. Again, I didn't have time to sit and compare them side by side, but of course this just lifts it a wee bit more, being true 4K there. So what else we got? I did check out the Japanese cut. It's slightly different to the international cut, and it includes an alternate end fight against Jihan Jai. So this fight is available also to watch separate at about just over 2 minutes in length, although not fully restored, whereas the full version does look amazing. So that separate fight scene doesn't necessarily feel that it was fully restored, but that full version of that Japanese edit is absolutely gorgeous, and it also runs probably about 2 minutes shorter in length. We've also got then on there's an interview with Colin Camp, of course, Bruce Lee's love interest throughout the movie. Great to see, actually. Didn't know where it was going to go, but she was great to listen to. Runs for about 12 minutes and definitely has some interesting memories and positive experiences to talk about. So it was pretty much, for me, a really good extra to have there. Just pop this open while I'm blethering on, of course. There were, of course, plenty of deleted and extended scenes to enjoy. They were pretty cool, and most of them do appear in other cuts, but it was cool to finally see the greenhouse fight with Casanova Wong. That runs for about 5 minutes, but again does come about in alternate cuts, which is fantastic. There's an archival interview with Dan Inosanto from the Hong Kong Legends release. It runs for around 36 minutes. I have seen it before. I only quickly glanced through that, of course. And another with Bob Wall, which his interview is with Mike Leader from the Shout Factory release of Game of Death a few years back, and it runs for just under half an hour, probably around 29 minutes or so. But again, great to see and great to hear. There's behind the scenes footage as featured in Bruce Lee the Legend. Of course, Bruce Lee the Legend appears restored on another disc in this box set, which is great. So this is another wee extra that they've kind of obviously taken from something else you're going to see later on, and a much better quality. But yeah, it runs for about 4 minutes, just over 4 minutes in length. But it's fun, and it was good to see the likes of Yuen Biao and Sammo Hung on set, working together, and as I said before, doubling many of the fake Bruce Lee's moves. So that was pretty cool, but just very, very good to see. Then we also have, let me just pop that open again, we have got then a pre-production featurette. So this is like a short Golden Harvest promotional video on the film, narrated by Michael Worth and Andre Morgan. Runs for just under 7 minutes in length, and it was pretty cool. It was definitely interesting enough to watch. And of course, then there's some outtakes and dailies of the parking lot fight, directed by Sammo Hung, which were pretty cool to see. I really enjoyed that. That runs for just a minute and a half though, so it's quite a small piece. Then they've also put on, from the Shout Factory release, Mike Leader's location featurette. Fun to see, gives you a nice wee tour through the streets of Hong Kong, and that runs for about 7.5 minutes. And then of course, there's another great selection of trailers, TV spots, another 14-minute collection of Bruceploitation trailers, which was cool to see. Always have a blast with those, of course. That also included The Silent Flute. And then there's about a 10-minute trailer reel of Robert Klaus at Golden Harvest and the work that he's done there. And then, of course, you have an extensive image gallery of lobby cards, behind the scenes, poster art, video art, that kind of things. But all in all, an absolutely jam-packed and incredible disc to have in this collection. Absolutely. So of course that takes us on to Game of Death, the alternate versions, featuring more stunning artwork from Tom Ralston here. I thoroughly enjoyed this piece, the Chinese version, with its cool opening song and credits. Runs for just under 90 minutes, and it's only presented in HD in a full 1080p, not 4K or 2K restored as such, but looked fantastic. It's presented in Mandarin with English subtitles, and it's definitely a very different edit to the usual cut. I mean, to be honest, I might even enjoy this more than I did the international cut, or that version that I'm used to seeing. It just had a bit of a tidier ending, I feel, and kind of like completed the story for me, as opposed to that abrupt ending the international version has. So I still went on then to watch the alternate Cantonese version. I've yet to finish watching the Mandarin Taiwanese version. Again, there's some different edits and cuts in there. Some fights have been shuffled about and rejigged. There's certain elements to each of those cuts that are slightly different to the Chinese version that is on here, and definitely the international version that is on the first disc. But yeah, it's definitely got some crazy stuff on there. The Cantonese version runs for about 92 minutes, whereas the Taiwanese Mandarin version runs for 90 minutes. Then, of course, there's the archival Hong Kong Legends, I believe, interview with Casanova Wong, which I've seen before, but I watched it again. Pretty cool to see and hear his stories on things, on the film and on the fight scene and on his career. That runs for about 17 minutes in length. Then you've got a documentary called The Hong Kong Connection. So this is like, again, I think it feels like it's a Hong Kong Legends produced piece. It's a short doco featuring Sammo Hung, Donnie Yen and Jackie Chung, which was a bit of an odd choice, but of course he did spoof Bruce Lee somewhat in Wong Jing's High Risk alongside Jet Li. Runs for about just over 18 minutes, and it was pretty cool to hear their stories and their kind of memories on Bruce Lee and what an inspiration he has been, of course. So Sammo also returns in another archival featurette, Bruce Lee Remembered, along with other actors like Simon Yam, Wong Jing, Clarence Fock, and many, many others, of course. That runs for about 7.5 minutes and is presented in 4:3. But it's a pretty cool featurette to check out there, so it is. And then, of course, he appears one more time in the doco called Legacy of the Dragon, and this time along with people such as Dan Inosanto, George Lazenby, Joe Lewis, Andre Morgan, and many, many more. And it runs much longer. Now it runs for about, I think it was around 48 minutes, 49 minutes. And it's taken, I believe, then from the Hong Kong Legends release of Game of Death also. So I knew it seemed familiar when I first started watching it, but again, it's quite an interesting piece. So I just got stuck into it one more time. So that's not everything. There's a lot on this one. A lot. I think this is definitely the one disc out of the 3 that took me the longest to get through, if I'm being honest. So also on here we have got a featurette called Dragon Rising. This is like an early screen test of Bruce from 1965. It's as famous as all of his films. It runs for about 8 minutes and I absolutely love it. But this is that same black and white footage you see where he is sitting in the armchair talking about life, talking about his philosophy on life, and obviously doing somewhat of a display of his kung fu, which is pretty cool and terrifying, the old guy that he pretends to hit. I really, really enjoy this, and I'm glad to have it on Blu-ray now, or on 4K, because I feel that it was something I just never had a good enough version of, and anytime I ever saw it, it was really, really dodgy bootleg quality. So absolutely super stoked to have that. Then there is the Grandmaster and the Dragon. So this is an interview with Grandmaster William Chung on his years growing up with Bruce Lee and his own life in martial arts. Not someone I've ever heard of or know enough about, but definitely some great stories to listen to there, and it runs quite lengthy actually. I think it's about 55 minutes in length, so it is quite the piece. And then of course, as usual, there are a ton of archival interviews there. You've got interviews with Robert Lee, Pat Johnson, Van Williams, Fred Weintraub, James Liu, and many, many more of Bruce's family and friends. And that really compiles what I think is one of the busiest discs released in this Blu-ray set. And then there is the final Game of Death. I mean, I think this is the disc everyone wanted to spend their money for. This is definitely the one that has gained the most attraction, and I cannot blame it, because oh my god, I mean, what an incredible piece this is. A whopping like 3 hours 43 minutes this docu-film runs for. It took a lot out of me, so be prepared. It does give you the option to watch it in chapters. I think 8 in all, with the 8th one being the completed version of the final Game of Death. Everything leading up to that is a narrated docu-piece about the footage we just haven't seen as such. The behind the scenes clips there of Bruce creating shot after shot after shot after shot. This was absolutely fan-friggin-tastic to watch. Absolutely fascinating. Reveals many new scenes and clips taken from Game of Death, and is delivered with this wonderful narration along with some really ominous music that helps, for me, helps make this probably one of the best Bruce Lee documentaries I have ever seen, hands down. It was just fantastic. I mean, I couldn't stop it. I had to just sit up late and continue watching this because it really had me for the whole thing. Just there's certain elements to this docufilm that you never imagined you would ever see. So it was absolutely, for a first time viewing, just wonderful and mind-blowing, not knowing what was coming. Of course, that final Game of Death was just as fulfilling as Robert Klaus's full film. When you get to that final piece, when you get to see what they've put together here. Now granted, the opening of it was a little corny and a little hilarious, I have to say. They could have picked a much better Bruce Lee lookalike for the opening. But that said, it really worked. And what they've edited together here for that final film using Bruce Lee's footage was beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So well put together. James Tian gets much more screen time, as does the other actor, stuntman, who I can't remember straight off now, sorry. I should do after watching hours and hours of this. It's embarrassing. But a beautiful piece put together. Wonderful detective work in figuring things out, because of course, as they explain, there was really no layout, no plan for them to follow as to what Bruce's full intentions were with this movie. So what they have put together was pretty cool. Now, saying that, separately, there's an extra feature here called Game of Death Revisited, and this is an early attempt to reconstruct Lee's original vision from 2001. This is a Japanese-made final Game of Death. It's very similar in its layout, not too far off the same idea. I just feel that what they've done here was certainly much tidier, much more professional. So yes, that GOD Revisited was an interesting piece. Runs for about 39 minutes in all. Probably just for the time that it was made, has some outdated ways of putting it out there, but still a fun piece nonetheless. Regardless, I think you're going to maybe watch that once and continue to go back to this this piece that Arrow have put together as the final Game of Death, because it is friggin' epic. Then there's some Super 8 footage of Dan Inosanto. Runs for about 9 minutes using his nunchucks. Teaching with the nunchucks, I suppose. Single and double, which is friggin' cool. Really, it's just, you know, that kind of nostalgic feel when you're watching something on Super 8? That's what this gave me. It was pretty cool to see. I've only ever seen Dan in this movie. I haven't seen a lot of him in other things or doing other stuff. But it was nice to see this extra wee piece focused on him. I really like that. What else we got there? We've got an interview with the Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. Again, this is another archival interview, I suppose, from the mid-70s, mid to late 70s. It runs for just over 2 minutes in length. Nothing too extreme, but just cool to hear his views from the time. Of course, Bruce had just died, and he does briefly talk about that, but it's only 2 minutes, so we don't really get a lot in there. Then there's Frames of Fury. So this is, this is about 6 minutes of short clips of the bits that kind of came off the end of the action shot. Most of these you will see in that 3-hour 43-minute documentary. They've kind of pulled a lot of that in there, if not all of it in there. But if you just want to kind of a brief behind the scenes of how Game of Death was put together with Bruce on set, you can check this out. Again, runs for about 6 minutes in length, but it's all very brief clips, and it's pretty cool to see. I do love that type of raw footage, and I really enjoyed watching it. And then of course, finally, you have this fantastic image gallery there filled with plenty of lobby cars. This one was all photos from the set. Yes, it's about 4 different albums featuring different characters from the movie, but all beautiful black and white shots and really done well. There's a lot to see here within that image gallery. But again, wow, I mean, just wow, to have something that with that length, 3 hours and 43 minutes, to sit there and watch something brand new and something fresh on a guy who passed 50 years ago, and this incredible legacy that he has left behind, and this unfinished film that has become, I mean, just a legend in its own right, was just fascinating to see where it went. It didn't need to be that long necessarily, but it allowed itself to be that long so that we could be treated to so many things that we haven't seen before. So there we go. That is all 3 Game of Death discs. Bit of a tongue twister. All fascinating, all wonderful artwork there from Tom, and all very, very different, but each of them absolutely jam-packed, and definitely one of the biggest highlights for me from this Bruce Lee set, thanks to Arrow Video. So thank you once again for watching another video here on Invincible Asia. Don't forget you can check out hundreds of others here on the channel. You can also show your continued support by heading over to my new merch store, or by checking out invincibleasia.com, where you can read my full movie reviews, and follow me on Instagram @InvincibleAsia. Until next time though, enjoy your Kung Fu, and I will see you soon.